one. Okay, what is up, everyone? This is the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Amy Nixon. Today is March the 2nd. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this content to all your friends, all your family members, to your dog, who cares, everybody. Send it to everybody. And joining me, as always, from Austin, Texas, the Stat King himself, Michael Ween. What is up, man?
Thank you. Welcome to episode 59 of the Raw Prospect Podcast. It's going to be a good one. Today, we are going to be talking about, we're going to do a segment for the signing of J.J. Watt. Then we are going to talk about some of the things. We're going to go back in time a little bit, and we're going to talk about do an NFL segment on expectations versus reality, like what we thought would happen versus what actually happened, and kind of admit some of our wrongs. And then we're going to jump into some baseball, talk about some of the offseason moves and the most improved teams for this upcoming season. And then finally, we're going to do a little segment on Tiger, who a week ago today got hurt in that horrific car crash. So we'll talk a little bit about that and his career. So with that, Let's get into this. We have a lot to talk about.
Right. All right, let's start with this J.J. Watt stuff. So J.J. Watt signed with the Arizona Cardinals. Was it today or yesterday? It was yesterday, right? It was yesterday. $31 million over 2 years, $22 million guaranteed. He turns 32 years old next month. I'll let you go first here. What were your initial thoughts to him signing with the Cardinals?
Well, when I did my prep, I gave this signing a grade. My initial reaction was, wow, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect the Cardinals to be a team at first to be in the running for J.J. Watt. And I didn't really know what to expect. We all know he's a veteran. He probably wants to chase the ring. That's what we all thought. But I didn't know what what's the word? What is
criteria?
What he wanted.
Yeah.
What his criteria was for a free agent destination. And Arizona kind of came out of left field. I didn't expect them to be the team to actually get him, but he did value money more than I thought he would. I thought maybe he'd take a little less to go play for more of a contender than Arizona is, but Arizona gave him what he wanted, I guess. We all know he has connections to Arizona. Vance Joseph worked with him in Houston. He's one of the defensive coaches there in Arizona. And he obviously has connections to DeAndre Hopkins, who heavily recruited him. So it's not a total surprise. I wasn't really thinking about Arizona as a destination. Now, in terms of the actual signing, it's a good signing. You're getting a future first ballot Hall of Famer in J.J. Watt. He's one of 3 players in NFL history to win 3 or more Defensive Player of the Year awards. The other 2 are Aaron Donald and Lawrence Taylor. So you're in really, really good company there, and you're getting a very good player. Since 2011, when he entered the league, he's been in the league 10 years. He ranks second in sacks with 101, second to only Von Miller, first in quarterback hits, first in tackles for loss, first in forced fumbles, and first in fumble recoveries. So very good. And he's going to be great in the locker room, and he's going to be a good leader for kind of a younger Arizona Cardinals football team. They have a lot of young talent on that defense, so I think his leadership will be valuable. The only thing I worry about with J.J. Watt is obviously his extensive history of injuries the past 4 to 5 years. If you look at his first 5 seasons, again, he's been in the league 10 years. He played all 80 regular season games, never missed a game, 132 tackles for loss, 299 tackles, 74.5 sacks, 15 forced fumbles, 2 defensive touchdowns. Really good. But the last 5 seasons, he's missed 32 games. So he's really only played 3 full seasons over the last 5 due to some injuries. And his stats really aren't as good. Only 26.5 sacks the past 5 seasons, 110 tackles, only 40 tackles for loss. Still decent. It's not bad, but it's not what it was. So that's really the only thing I worry about. But as a player, he's going to come in. He's going to be great in the locker room. He's going to provide good leadership, a veteran presence on a young, talented defense. Him and Chandler Jones are going to be fantastic out on the edge. Since 2012, nobody has more sacks than Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt. So that should be fantastic. It should help their defense. And you look at that division, you need pass rushers. You got to face Russell Wilson. Well, as of right now, you have to face Russell Wilson. That could change. You have to face Matthew Stafford now, and you have to face Jimmy Garoppolo when he's healthy. So a lot of gunslingers in that division, and you need pass rushers to go out and compete in that division. So it's a good signing. Just worry about the injuries. I gave it a B plus, sort of in that range, because you can't go too low because he is a future first ballot Hall of Famer. When you get that sort of player, that caliber of player, it's obviously going to help your team, but the injuries are worrisome.
Right. I'm with you there, and definitely the injuries are a concern. But I just think the signing is a win no matter what, whether he's on the field or not, because the type of leader he is, you can't undervalue leadership. Like, that's extremely important, especially for a young team like the Cardinals. And I think it's interesting that this text leaked that he sent to Kyler Murray when he signed with Arizona. He said, "I'm here because I believe in you," and I think that belief from a legend like J.J. Watt, like that shouldn't be underrated. Like, I think someone who's as highly respected as J.J. Watt, if he's telling them that they're doing the right things, then they'll have that extra amount of confidence to go out there and continue that. And pairing him with Chandler Jones, I mean, those are two guys that since 2012 have been near the top in terms of pass rushers. So these are two consistent veteran guys. And I think if you go into the draft and you draft maybe a D tackle, like neutralize the middle a little bit, this defense could be really, really good.
Yeah, this Arizona Cardinals defense is going to be really, really good if some of these younger players pan out to what we think they could be. You're talking about the edge rushers, Chandler Jones, veteran guy. Nobody has more sacks since 2012. J.J. Watt on the other side. One more thing on J.J. He was actually double teamed 30% of the time, 30% of snaps last year in Houston. That's the most among all edge rushers. So, once Jadeveon Clowney left, once he was traded, all that offensive line attention shifted to J.J. Watt because that's how good of a player he is. So now with Chandler Jones, he's going to be getting more one-on-one matchups with offensive tackles and guards because we know he can line up in different places, and that's going to help him some. And then you have a guy who they drafted high last year out of Clemson, very versatile linebacker, and Isaiah Simmons. Hopefully he'll take a year or two leap. Buda Baker was amazing last year at safety. It's yet to be seen if they'll sign Patrick Peterson, but he's another veteran guy they have. But yeah, I agree with you. They need to maybe draft one maybe another corner. But nucleus mixed with these veteran players and J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, and Patrick Peterson potentially has the potential to be really, really special.
Right. I think that's everything with that. It's a really interesting signing. And honestly, I'm excited to see Arizona next season, but we've got a long way to go in the off season.
Right.
But with that, I think we'll move on to our next segment, which is the NFL expectations versus reality segment. So, in episode 49, at the end of that podcast, that was probably our longest podcast out of all, whatever it is, 58 that we've done, like 2.5 hours or something like that. But hidden at the end of that podcast, we predicted the night before, we predicted all of the regular season games for the rest of the season. And at that point, it was right before week 13. So we predicted all the rest of the regular season games. And then from there, we had our playoff seedings, and we made our bracket for the playoffs based on what we picked for the rest of the regular season. So now we're going to go back to those predictions and see how we did. So starting with the AFC, here's how we had it stacking up. We had Kansas City winning out and finishing 15-1, which is one win better than what they finished. We had Pittsburgh finishing 14-2 in the second seed. They ended up finishing third seed behind Buffalo. And then Tennessee, we had at the third seed, who ended up dropping to the fourth seed later. And so we had Pittsburgh at 2 instead of 3. We had Tennessee at 3 instead of 4. And then we had Buffalo at 4 instead of 2. And then Cleveland, we had correct at the 5 seed. Wait, no. Cleveland was the 6 seed. I'm sorry. Cleveland was the 6 seed and Baltimore was the 5 seed. And then we had the Las Vegas Raiders in the playoffs at 10-6 in that 7 seed. So we were a little off, but one thing I wanted to point out was we were a little bit too high on Las Vegas. We were a little bit too low on Indianapolis. We said during the podcast that we were both low on Indianapolis, and we thought they were going to fall apart going into the rest of the season. And actually, the opposite happened. The Raiders actually fell apart, which is really interesting. But one thing we hit right on the head, though, is we got that Baltimore prediction right. If you remember, the Baltimore Ravens were just coming off a win against the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. Then we did the podcast right after that. So, and at that point, they were sitting at 7-5, I believe. And they closed the season and won out from there and finished 11-5. So we hit that right on the head. We just didn't get their seeding quite right. I have this big old paragraph here that I have to sift through. Okay, I'm just gonna. Okay, so one thing that we said about the Steelers during the podcast. This is funny in hindsight. I said I think their formula to win games works in the playoffs. They're going to control the clock, play great defense, and run the football. Say what you want about how they've looked like the past few weeks, but the formula works in the postseason, point blank, period. That's they did not end up running the football. I think
no.
It's funny that we saw the signs and we didn't go with them, you know. I think that's pretty interesting. Maybe that's one thing we can improve on in the future. I think we have to think about projecting the teams where they're heading rather than being so set on recency bias and what they did earlier in the season. So,
right.
But we did have reasons to believe that Pittsburgh would turn it around, but it didn't end up happening, unfortunately. So let me see. Tennessee, right. So we were really high on Tennessee. Um, at that point in the season, Tennessee was on a roll and they were starting to get hot. And we were like, okay, Tennessee is hitting their stride again. They're doing the same thing they did last year. And then the very next day, they played Cleveland and got smacked. So that did not work out well for us. Cleveland went into Tennessee the very next day and exposed all of their weaknesses, especially defensively. And then from there, it was downhill for Tennessee. They weren't quite the same. Um, okay, now I'll get into the bracket a little bit. So with Indianapolis, we had them missing the playoffs, obviously. But one of the reasons we had them missing the playoffs is because we had them losing to the Raiders, which is a game that they won. And we also had them splitting the series with the Texans one way or the other, whether they lost at home or on the road, either way. We had them splitting that season series with the Texans. And we were really close, actually. If the Texans had held on to the football on the final play of the game, they might have won those games. Who knows? So we were close. We were really, really close on that. And then, of course, the Raiders, Derek Carr got injured. That didn't help their case. But let's be honest, they filled their own. They buried their own grave pretty much. They were terrible to close the season.
Right.
But I think that's it for the AFC. We were pretty accurate. We had Pittsburgh and Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. And we did have Kansas City and Buffalo playing in the divisional round. So one round early, but it still happened. So I think we did okay. We had Tennessee and Baltimore playing each other in the wild card round. So other than that Las Vegas pick, I think our picks turned out okay on the AFC side.
Why don't you keep going with the NFC side real quick? Because
Okay.
I did it a little bit differently than you.
Okay.
I didn't actually go back that far.
Okay. Yeah.
But why don't you just hit on the NFC real quick, and then I'll tell you what I did.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. For the NFC, our predictions were we had the Saints in the 1 seed at 13-3, Seattle in the 2 seed at 12-4, Green Bay in the 3 seed at 12-4 as well. The New York Giants at 5-11, making the playoffs in the 4 seed. Tampa Bay at 11-5. We got that correct in that 5 seed. LA Rams, another correct pick at 10-6. And then we had Arizona in the 7 seed. I think the Arizona pick wasn't that bad of a pick given what we had seen. Like there was no reason for us to believe at that point that Chicago was going to do what they did and turn it around. They were at that point, they were on the Nick Foles train, and that did not go well. So I don't think it ended up mattering, obviously, because we had them losing in the wild card round regardless. But the interesting thing is what we had at the top. We had the Saints finishing in the 1 seed, which at the time they were in the 1 seed, but there's no way we could have predicted the Drew Brees injury. And then Seattle, of course, they limped to the finish line, which opened the door for Green Bay to pop into that 1 seed. We won another funny quote that I got. So I said, if Tampa Bay gets to the NFC Championship, that might be Tom Brady's best accomplishment going to a new team and getting them one game from the Super Bowl. And of course, he won the Super Bowl. So, okay, yeah, that's incredible. And another quote I had was, I think the NFC is going to be wild this year, no matter what, with some possible legendary QB matchups. But hopefully, Jared Goff doesn't come in and ruin it. And of course, he had to ruin it, and he eliminated Russell Wilson. So I predicted that. So that's just great. One last thing that I wanted to hit on was the NFC East. We were slightly off. We were really close. And who knows if Jalen Hurts stays in that game on Sunday Night Football, we might be talking about a different scenario. But it ended up being the Washington Football Team making it. I think we did pretty good on those predictions as well. Let's talk about the bracket here. So for the bracket, we had New Orleans and Seattle in the NFC Championship game. That's a crazy one. But of course, we had the LA Rams beating Green Bay in the wild card round instead of them playing in the divisional round where Green Bay won. So that ended up being New Orleans versus LA in the divisional round, the rematch of the NFC Championship from a few years ago. So we were way off on the NFC. We actually in the podcast we talked about how if Tampa Bay won, we wouldn't be surprised because we knew that if our prediction came to be like it was with them finishing 11-5, that they would have had to have built momentum going into the playoffs and also gotten an easy win against an NFC East team to get even more momentum, which ended up coming true. We just didn't stick to our guns and pick Tampa Bay in that game, which is interesting. Like we actually hit it right on the head, but we went with the other team anyway. So, yeah, we had Kansas City and New Orleans in the Super Bowl, and yeah, I'll let you hit on your points here.
Okay, well, that was a lot to take in.
Right.
Obviously, when you do these predictions, you're gonna get some right, you're gonna get some wrong. You can't be right all the time, and I think it's good that we come on here every once in a while, especially during football season when we do. That's, I guess, our most heavy prediction time, prediction season, where we do a lot of predictions on these podcasts during football season. So I think it'll be good next year if we come on afterwards and we admit where we were right and where we were wrong. I think it's just kind of a humility thing that we should do going into the future. Now, I didn't go back that far, all the way back to the regular season pod, but I did go back to our playoff prediction pods. And I have a couple things that I want to admit that I was sort of wrong about. The first, I expected Seattle to be a lot better than they were, and I expected them to at least win a playoff game and make a deeper playoff run. That didn't happen. They lost at home to Jared Goff with an injured thumb on his throwing hand. Obviously, we had good reasoning for that.
Right.
Over the last half of the season, the Seattle Seahawks defense played really well. The addition of Carlos Dunlap at the trading deadline really helped that pass rush, and they were able to figure some things out in the secondary to help them play better down the stretch. So they had their defense playing well. It was actually a top 10 defense in a lot of categories the past half of the season. And their offense was struggling a bit, but we still thought, I said this a bunch of times in our wild card predictions pod leading up to that wild card game against the Rams. I said, look, the Seattle offense hasn't been good the past couple weeks, but we know that all Russell Wilson needs is one or two great drives, touchdown drives to go and win the game. That's all he really needs. And we've seen it a bunch of times. I said that 3 times on the podcast, on that Wild Card Predictions podcast. And that, of course, in the wild card game didn't actually come to fruition. In fact, in the wild card game, Russell Wilson was unusually bad. at least for his standards. What he did in that wild card game, 11 out of 27 completions. That's a 40% completion percentage, which is terrible for him. He threw 2 touchdowns, but he threw that pick 6 on the screenplay, which was pretty terrible. He was sacked 5 times, and his quarterback rating was 72, which is super low for him. So, obviously, the Rams had a very good defense, so it's not like, they lost to a bad football team. The Rams deserved to be there, and they were really good. I definitely thought Seattle would at least win that game and probably at least get to the NFC Championship game, because I thought they would figure out the offense and that defense would continue to play well, but that obviously wasn't the case. Secondly, I horribly underestimated the Cleveland Browns, particularly Baker Mayfield. I thought, first time in the playoffs against a division rival like Pittsburgh, that's kind of been like, I don't know, your father the past 25 years in terms of like dominating that rivalry.
Right.
I mean, Ben Roethlisberger was like the daddy of the Cleveland Browns. But I horribly underestimated Baker's ability to play in big games. We hadn't seen him up to this point win a ton of big games. But down the stretch of the season, he was very good. And in the 2 playoff games, he completed 63% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, only 1 interception, and had a 95 quarterback rating. So very, very good from Baker Mayfield. I really underestimated his ability to play in a big game and overcome in that wild card game, not having his coach and some of their best players on that roster, and still going into Pittsburgh and winning that game. That was very impressive. And he played very well against the what we said was a top 2 or 3 defense in the league, despite all the injuries. So credit to Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns. And the last thing I want to say is I really expected this to be the year for the Green Bay Packers to get to the Super Bowl. I did pick them to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game, in that championship weekend podcast where we did our predictions. I gave a bunch of statistics about how Green Bay was very good at controlling time of possession, which they actually did in that game. But I also gave a statistic where Green Bay had only turned the ball over 1 time in their past 7 games leading up to that time. And I thought they would play a clean, mistake-free football game. And obviously that didn't happen. They turned the ball over twice, and those proved to be costly. Aaron Rodgers throws that interception. They get a touchdown off of it. Aaron Jones fumbled at the start of the second half. They scored a touchdown off. Both of them were costly.
Right.
Tampa Bay converted those into touchdowns, and that was pretty much the difference in the game. So I really expected, with the year Aaron Rodgers had, the year that offense was having, incredible, and a decent defense, like a competitive top of the league, like top half of the league defense. I really expected this to be the year for them to get to the Super Bowl, but now that didn't happen, and Aaron Rodgers is now 1-4 in NFC Championship games, which isn't ideal. So those are the 3 big things that I think, not that I necessarily actually stated those things on the podcast, but those are the things I kind of, if you read between the lines, those are the points I was hitting home with in those podcasts, and those are the things that I think I was wrong about. But we did nail a bunch of other things. We were right in that playoff pod about Tennessee being a very flawed football team, especially on the defensive end. We nailed that. What else did we nail? We nailed a lot of things if you go back and listen to those playoff podcasts. But we made the mistake of betting against Tom Brady in the NFC Championship game, but then we both picked him to win the Super Bowl. So, you can bet against them once, but don't bet against them twice. So,
Right.
You're right and you're wrong. I think this will be a good segment to carry into the season. We can do it more throughout, not just at the end of the season. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. So
Right.
there you go.
One thing I wanted to add to what you were saying about Russell Wilson and the Seahawks is the fact that it's interesting all of these storylines that are coming out of Seattle in the aftermath of that disappointing loss to the Rams. I think there may have been some chemistry issues, maybe before or during that game, that might have been the difference, especially between Russell Wilson and the coaching staff. There was one report saying that there was a meeting, I think uh, a week before the playoffs, I think the week of the 49ers game, week 17, where Russell Wilson walks into the room and he makes his suggestions for him being a little bit more in control of the offense and throw a little bit more. And then they basically shrugged him off and didn't basically disregarded all of his suggestions. And he was not a fan of that. And I think that really rubbed him the wrong way. And now we're seeing the aftermath of that. You just don't win playoff games when you're not on the same page as your coaches. That's the bottom line.
Right.
So
okay. Well, that's all I have to
yeah,
say. So
yeah.
let's
If
move on
y'all
to our
like
next
this
segment.
segment, if y'all like this segment, definitely let us know, because this was a segment that I really enjoyed preparing for. It was really fun to see what we thought, especially in that Week 12 podcast, where it was like way before what we thought of those teams, like about 3/4 of the way through the season versus what we thought in those playoff podcasts, which was really interesting. So yeah, uh, we'll move along here. Let's do our MLB stuff.
Okay.
I'll let you start out.
So for this segment, we are going to talk about obviously spring training started a couple days ago, and opening day is April 1st. So for the next couple weeks, obviously we'll have a lot of college basketball and NBA mixed in between. For the next couple weeks, we're going to be actually previewing each division. I think since we have about 3 more weeks until the season actually starts, we'll probably do an episode or two a week, and we'll preview 2 divisions each week. That's 6 divisions. It'll work out.
Mhm.
But today we're going to talk about who had the best off seasons and who improved their team the most. So I'm going to give you like my top 3 to 5 lists, and then I'll let you chime in on anything you might want to say.
Okay.
Okay, so the number 1 team who had an amazing offseason, the San Diego Padres. Now, if you don't know a lot about the San Diego Padres, I'll give you 2 names that you need to know. Number 1 is Manny Machado. You probably know who that is, the third baseman who they added in a trade a couple years ago. Or actually, no, not in a trade, in the offseason. And number 2 is Fernando Tatis Jr. Know that name. He's a 22-year-old shortstop who just came up, not last year, but the year before that, from the minors. One of the top players, top prospects, I should say, in baseball, and for good reason. They signed him at 22 years old. This is just how good he is. To a 14-year, $340 million contract extension.
Wow.
That's how highly people think of this kid. We know that Mike Trout got his money, a huge contract extension, near $500 million, like Patrick Mahomes level deal. We've seen a lot of big extensions in baseball, but never this young. 22 years old, and he's barely even played a full season in Major League Baseball. His first 2 years, obviously we had the shortened season last year and a full season the year before that, where he came up like halfway through and played a little bit. 143 games. A full season is 162, so he's played less than a full season. He has a 300 batting average, 39 home runs, 98 runs batted in, 27 stolen bases. And I'm not going to bore you with all the other stats, but that's really good. On a full season pace, you're talking about 40 home runs, a little over 100 RBIs, probably about 30 stolen bases. That's like all-star level, like top 5, top 10 player in the league good. And he's only 22 years old. He hasn't even hit his prime yet. And they have him for the next 14, 15 years at shortstop, one of the most important positions in the game. So they re-signed him, locked him up for the future, and they added pitching, lots of pitching. Blake Snell, you saw him pitch in the postseason for the Rays. You probably know who that is. Yu Darvish, he was a pitcher for the Cubs, really good, solid number 2 or number 3. And then another dude from the Pirates, who are just they're like the Texans. They're just auctioning off all 3 good players, and they're going to start a huge rebuild. Joe Musgrove. Those are 3 really solid starting pitchers. That was sort of the thing they were missing last year. Blake Snell is as close as it comes to an ace. He's one of 6 pitchers in the last 2 years with a strikeout percentage of over 30%, which means he strikes out about a third of the batters he faces. That's really good. The only other pitchers who do that in baseball are Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom. You probably know most of those names if you follow baseball like at all. If you watch any baseball, you know who those guys are. So to win the playoffs, you got to have elite pitching, and they added 3 really good, close to elite pitchers. That's why I have them number 1. Number 2, the New York Mets. This is going to be interesting. This is one of the reasons I'm sort of excited for this baseball season, because when you have those Subway Series games, and that rivalry in a baseball city like New York is, or at least used to be in the early 2000s, late 1990s, with the Yankees and the Mets are both good. That's good for baseball. And Mets are going to be really good. They got Francisco Lindor in a trade with the Cleveland Indians. And in that trade, they also got Carlos Carrasco, who's a starting pitcher, and he's really good too. Lindor has been a top 2, top 3 shortstop in the game. His first 6 years in the league, he's averaging, these are season averages over the first 6 years of his career, a 285 batting average, 29 home runs, about 85 runs batted in, and over 20 stolen bases. That's really good. And those are his averages. I mean, most of those years, he goes above and beyond. So really good starting shortstop for the Mets. He goes along with Michael Conforto and the polar bear. I'm blanking on his name. Pete Alonso, the first baseman, who's a young star. This Mets team is going to be really fun, and they have one of the best starting pitching staffs in baseball with deGrom and Syndergaard and all those guys. So they're going to be good. Watch out for the Mets. I don't think they're better than the Yankees yet, but it's going to be a conversation. I think at one point this season, we're going to have a conversation about who's better, the Mets or the Yankees. Because the Mets, while they don't have as good of a lineup as the Yankees, they do have better starting rotation. And that's the most important.
Right.
I'm not going to go all the way down to 5 since I don't want to go too long on time, but the third team I have is the Toronto Blue Jays. For you Astros fans out there, They signed George Springer. We know that name. Really good right fielder, who in his first 7 seasons has made 4 All-Star games, averages a 270 batting average, 35 home runs, 93 RBIs, and 10 stolen bases. Really good for a starting outfielder. He's going to be an all-star. And they also signed some quality starting rotation depth that they really badly needed, with guys like Steven Matz, who was a number 3 or number 4 starter last year with the Mets, and Robbie Ray, coming guy, formerly with the Diamondbacks. So they strengthened that starting rotation, which they needed to do, and they added 2 veteran hitters in George Springer and Marcus Semien from the Athletics, who can play shortstop and third base. So 2 really solid all-star level starting lineup hitters, and you added some pitching as well. So they're going to be, in the AL East, and we'll talk about this in the future pod, it's the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Rays. They're in a 3-horse race. It's one of the best divisions. So the Blue Jays have some young guys, Vladimir Guerrero. If you watch more baseball, you'll get to know these guys, but they're an up and coming team. The other 2 teams I had on my list were the White Sox of Chicago, the New Kings of Chicago. The Cubs are kind of tanking, if you will. They're not tanking, but they're not going to be. I don't expect them to be good. The White Sox are the best team in Chicago right now. They did some good things, and the Cardinals from St. Louis, kind of the love of St. Louis now that they don't have the Rams. They acquired Nolan Arenado, who you probably heard of.
Right. From the Rockies.
The best third baseman in baseball. So they basically fleeced the Rockies in that trade. They had to give like nothing for him. It's kind of like a DeAndre Hopkins-esque deal. They got one of the best players of the past decade for like a bag of chips and a Coke. Like, it's that type of thing. So those are the teams that the Dodgers were an honorable mention. They added Trevor Bauer after they won the World Series last year, which they really didn't need to do. They could have just brought back the same team and still have been the favorites, but they went ahead and just, added one of the best pitchers in baseball to Kershaw and some of the younger guys they have. So a lot of teams made moves, a lot of teams improved, but I'd say if you're going to take anything away from all this mumble jumble that I've been spewing the past 10 minutes, watch for the Padres, and especially Tatis Jr., who actually just hit a grand slam today in a spring training game, which those games really don't matter. It's like preseason football, but preseason baseball. And the New York Mets, watch out for them as well. And when you watch the Mets, watch Lindor and watch that starting pitching. It's going to be fun. So that's a nutshell of what I had to say.
Right.
So if you want to say anything, you can.
Well, my 3 teams were the Padres, the Mets, and the Cardinals. So we were on the same page there. But I got most of my information from this article on The Ringer. So shout out to them. But from what I read on the Padres, they were a poverty franchise for the longest time until last year, and then AJ Preller their general manager. AJ Preller was able to convince the owners to be one of the highest payrolls in baseball. So they're spending and they're going all in for the World Series now, and they're in the same division as the Dodgers. So they're going all in. That's big time stuff. That'll be really interesting. And then what I read on the Cardinals, pretty self-explanatory. Nolan Arenado. I mean, you can't. I mean, number one, you can't lose when you're trading for a player as good as Nolan Arenado because even I know who that is, and I don't even watch baseball. And uh, number two, when you're not giving up anything at all, that's even more of a win. So, uh, big
Right.
time stuff for the Cardinals, who I still hate, by the way. I'm a Rangers fan, so screw y'all. Um, and then the Mets, like you said, um, they added to their lineup, and their pitching is strong. So that's a combination for really good stuff. So it's going to be a process for me to get into baseball because there's so many games. It's going to be hard to cover for me. So it's going to be. I think I'm going to just try to watch highlights and try to get as much from the games as I can because I'm not going to be able to. I'm not going to have time to watch all of these games.
Right.
I'm just being honest. And I'm gonna read up as much as I can in these next coming weeks so I can give y'all the
Well,
best prediction possible.
here's what I would say for you is imbalance between the best teams and the worst teams in base, and this is a criticism of Major League Baseball, is the imbalance between the best teams and the worst teams is like it's like a Grand Canyon sized or even bigger gap between like teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Rays. The best teams are like up here, while the worst teams are like down here, like really, really bad, like not even trying to win.
Right.
It's a problem. So what I would suggest for maybe newer people who don't, I guess, postseason baseball is fun to watch.
Right. I watch postseason baseball. Right.
That's fun to watch. But maybe if you don't have time or you don't have the interest in watching a regular season game, um, just narrow your focus to about 10 or 15 teams, the top of the league, the playoff, or just maybe do the playoff teams from last year. Maybe just watch, highlights or because that's what we're mainly going to be talking about once the season starts is the actual contenders.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
just narrow your lists, follow the stars, um, read up every once in a while on what's going on, and that's that sort of thing.
Right.
But one thing I wanted to say is you talked about the general manager for the Padres, AJ Preller, and one thing we say in sports is football coaching wins, basket in the NBA, star players win, and in baseball, spending money and good front offices win. The Yankees, the Dodgers, being aggressive and spending money, that's what wins you games. So that just plays into that. The fact that AJ Preller went out and he was aggressive in acquiring these starting pitchers and trades, and he went out and he spent the money needed to lock up a player who is going to be probably the face of the league the next 3 years. So that just plays right into that. The teams that are the most aggressive in baseball in terms of off-season acquisitions and moves, trades, are typically the ones that win. It's not so much drafting and developing, not so much coaching.
Right. Yeah. I definitely heard that before. Oh, looks like you're frozen. Um hold on a second, guys. Michael, you there? Okay. Yo, I'm gonna pause this real quick. And once Michael unfreezes, I'm going to continue. So I will see y'all on the other side. Okay, sorry about that, y'all. We're Michael's back. We're good. So continue. You were just wrapping up the baseball
Yeah,
stuff.
all I was saying is baseball, it's typically known that front offices win, um, front offices typically are the teams that are in the playoffs and get to the World Series. And in football and basketball, we know in the NBA that star talent, star players, teams with those players typically are the teams that get to the NBA final and eventually win. And then NFL, coaching matters a lot more in football than it does in some of these other sports. So it's just interesting how that sort of works. And I was talking about the Padres and how you mentioned AJ Preller. The fact that he went out and he spent the money that he needed to go out and acquire these players, these starting pitchers, and re-signing Fernando Tatis Jr. That's what wins baseball games. That's what wins you World Series. And we're more into depth with the Padres, but they do have to play the Dodgers 20 times, and those games are going to be really fun. I think if we can reignite that Southern California rivalry, like we may be able to reignite the Mets-Yankees rivalry, those will be good storylines for baseball, just in terms of popularity and, I guess, increasing their fanship or their viewership, which they really need to do. So that's all I really have to say. Just some interesting tidbits to talk about. We'll get into like I mentioned earlier, we'll start doing our division previews here very soon. But with that will conclude that segment. We have one more segment we got to do.
Right. We're gonna talk about Tiger Woods here. Obviously we heard about the car accident from about a week ago.
Right.
And we're just going to talk about his best accomplishments and just talk about what he means to us and what his success has meant in our lives. But one thing I wanted to say was I think it's not like we know he's not like gone. It's just at this point we want to take the time to appreciate him, and we feel that this is something that we should have done for Kobe. We didn't think about it at the time, but this is something we will do in the future when these kind of things happen. So to get this started, so I'm just going to list what I think are his top 5 best accomplishments / crazy stats. And then I'll let you give yours, and we're just going to say what he means to us. So number 1, it was really hard to rank these. They're all incredible, but number 1, I had the Tiger Slam, which was him in 2000 and 2001 becoming the first player ever to win 4 majors in a row, starting with the 2000 U.S. Open, where he won by a record 15 shots. And then in the next major, he went to St. Andrews, the home of golf, and won that. Then at the PGA, he had the infamous battle with Bob May, which went into a playoff where he had that crazy moment where he walked in the putt and pointed at it going in. That's one of his most clutch moments ever. Most iconic for sure. And then 2001 Masters. A lot of people don't remember this Masters, but he went head to head with the number 2 and number 3 ranked players in the world, Phil Mickelson and David Duval, and came out on top. And in those majors, he was 86 shots better. His combined score in those 4 majors was 86 shots better than the next guy. And in that Masters, Tiger was a 2-1 favorite. That's insane. Okay. So moving on. Number 2, his 2019 Masters win. This was tough to pick between this one and the next one that I'm going to talk about a little later. But just everything that he went through, just the amount of time between Masters wins. I think that's the longest time between Masters wins ever. Just a crazy story. There was a point where he fell in his backyard. He had to wait for his daughter to come help him. He couldn't get up. And then he came back and won the Masters. Just incredible. Number 3, this is underrated. He won 2 majors with a torn ACL. A lot of people don't know this, but in the 2007 PGA Championship, his ACL was torn, and he won that tournament on a torn ACL. And then, of course, in the 2008 U.S. Open, he won that tournament with a torn ACL and two stress fractures in the same knee, which, of course, that's the iconic one. But a lot of people don't know that he actually tore his ACL way before that, which is why he had to miss the Masters that year. So he won. Not only did he win those 2 major starts in a row, both injured, but just I don't think it was even public at the time that he had a torn ACL in the 2007 PGA. Like that was something that I didn't even know until I did this research. So just crazy. And then number 4, 82 PGA Tour victories, 44 before the age of 30, which is the most all time. Just crazy stuff. Nothing more you can really say there. I mean, he's tied with Sam Snead for the most all time. And then number 5, here's a crazy stat. You'll like this one. He made 142 consecutive cuts from 2000 to 2005. And to put that into context, you would have to play every single tournament for 4 years straight and make the cut every single time to beat that record. Just insane.
Yeah.
So
the level of these, like the insane amount of accomplishments he has in his career, it's just absolutely incredible. I pretty much had the same list except in a different order. Number 5, actually, number 1 is the Tiger Slam. I don't think you can really argue it. To win 4 majors in a row, as you mentioned, starting with the 2000 U.S. Open, the 2000 Open.
He's frozen again. Oh, geez. This seems to happen every podcast now, y'all. I'm sorry about this. I'm just going to wait a few seconds to see if he comes back for us. And it doesn't seem like he will, so I'm going to pause again, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, we are back. Michael, go ahead and continue. Are you frozen again? Oh, crap. I think he's frozen again. Okay. I'm going to pause again. I'm so sorry about this, y'all. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. We had a little few-minute hiatus there, but go ahead and continue, Michael. You were on the U.S. Open stuff.
Tiger Slam. So 2000 U.S. Open, 2000 Open, 2000 PGA, and 2001 Masters. He shot a 65 under par in those 4 tournaments. And in every round, during those 16 rounds of golf, he made only 23 bogeys. The second lowest was Justin Leonard, who made 41. So he just blew away the field. He made 91 birdies. That's close to 6 per round, which is incredible. And he didn't have 1 3-putt at the 2000 U.S. Open. So you go down the list. I'm just reading a list of statistics from the actual Tiger Slam. Golf Channel did a documentary on this that I watched some of to prepare for this podcast. But just incredible feat, winning 4 straight majors. I don't think we might not ever see that again. Second, I had the same thing, the 2019 Masters victory. By far, I think his greatest win, but that might be a little bit of a recency bias. Coming back from everything that he's been through, the DUI on the side of the road in Florida, where he got caught with what they call a cocktail of painkillers in his system. You probably saw the body cam video of that. That was probably the rock bottom low point. All the back surgeries, the leg surgeries, everything in culmination. And to have his kids there old enough to see him win a major was just great to see. The hug with his kids afterwards got a lot of people teary-eyed. And I think when these type of athletes, Tiger got a lot of fame. He was famous early on, and I think a lot of people don't really like that. But he went through a lot of stuff that normal people have to go through, and I think when these athletes go through those things, it just makes us. It allows us to love them more, because we know that they go through the same things we do as normal citizens.
Right.
The third thing I had was the 142 consecutive cuts made. The same thing as you, but I want to go a little deeper. So between 1998 and 2003, he made 142 consecutive cuts. That we all know. That's unlikely to be broken like any time in the next, ever probably. What some people to consider the best golfer of all time to be Jack Nicklaus, his longest streak of consecutive cuts made was 105, which is about 2 years and 38% fewer cuts made than Tiger's streak, which is incredible. And during his true prime years, which people consider to be 97 to 2008, 2009, sort of around there, in those 12 years, he missed only 11 cuts. 12 years, 11 cuts. That is just unheard of. Incredible. It's just mind-boggling. So that's my third. My fourth actually goes back to the fact that he won 6 consecutive USGA titles. He actually won, let's see what it says here, 3 consecutive U.S. amateurs. He won 3 straight U.S. junior amateurs and then 3 straight U.S. amateurs. So that brings his total to 6 consecutive USGA titles. He went 6 years without losing a single match in the USGA match play format against the top amateur golfers in the world at the time. Didn't lose a single match. And since 1985, only 18 players have won more than 1 U.S. amateur title, and none of them have won more than 2. He won 6 in a row. So that's number 4. And number 5 were the wins at the 2008 U.S. Open with the torn ACL and the 2 stress fractures in one of his knees. And don't forget, I believe, and I'm not a golf historian or anything, but I have read probably 2 or 3 books on Tiger, and I've watched a lot of documentaries, so I know something or other about Tiger. I believe that tournament went to a playoff, and so he had to play an extra round and walk an extra round on that torn ACL and broken leg, and he sustained that. So pretty incredible. the list could go on, and it's hard to rank them because they're so incredible. But I just thought that would be a cool segment to do, just to honor his. We know he's still here. He's still alive. He's not dead, but he's going through a tough time, and it's going to be extremely difficult. Doctors are saying for him to get back to playing golf competitively. So if we have in fact seen the last of him on the PGA Tour, at least winning at a high level or doing what he's playing competitively, like actually trying to win golf tournaments, this was something I felt and we felt we had to do. So that's that. I haven't been in golf as long as you have, so maybe you probably have more to say on what Tiger actually means to you. So you can go ahead and do that, and then we can go ahead and sign off.
Right. Tiger, honestly, the things that I saw, the appeal that I saw in the game of golf, it has a lot to do with him. Obviously, we know all of his accomplishments, but it wasn't just that. It was the way that just his demeanor and the way that he just dominated on the course and just never wavered ever. Like he was just unbreakable mentally. And just that 2008 US Open, watching that as a kid, I was like, that's what I want to do. And, obviously, like
Right.
as a kid, like I didn't know the magnitude of what happened with all the scandals in 2010, but like it didn't hit me as hard because I was a kid and I didn't really know what it meant. But he's always been someone like that I strive to be like, and just I don't know, man. It's so hard to see him go through stuff like this. Like like by now I thought he would be just. I thought Jack Nicklaus's record would be in the past. I thought he'd be 20 majors by now, or 100+ wins, because that's the kind of pace that he was on, But obviously that didn't happen. And honestly, it feels. It felt weird ranking these things. It felt kind of stupid, to be honest. These are all things that are equally great in my opinion. So it felt kind of weird to rank them, but
Yeah.
it's all in good fun. And I just want to thank Tiger for just being I was going to say role model, but for just inspiring me. That's he led me on the path for the person I am today, and
Yeah,
that's
he definitely made a lot of people, or made the game of golf cool. He made it popular when he came on tour. The rating difference when he's not playing a tournament versus when when he is it's a pretty monumental gap. Now with all the young talent we have on the PGA Tour, I do think golf is going to be just fine without Tiger, because over the past couple of years with all these injuries and stuff, they've been able to sustain pretty good viewership. They've been able to prepare for this time without potentially having Tiger. So I think they're going to be fine, but obviously Tiger has been a big part in the game of golf. He made a lot of people follow in his footsteps. He inspired the younger generation of players we see now who were watching him as a kid win those majors early on. And it was an incredible honor, or incredible thing to see, not honor. It was an incredible thing to see what the players did Sunday at the whatever tournament it was, the Workday Championship.
Right.
where most of them all wore the Sunday or some version of the Sunday black and red attire that Tiger always wears on Sunday. That was really cool to see as something to kind of honor him too from the actual players on tour. And you can tell, like, some of these players, they get pretty emotional because they over the past 5 to 10 years, they've become pretty close friends with Tiger. So, they care deeply and they want to see him play. They want to see him playing. They want to see him, doing good. They don't want to see him go through all this stuff, and it's hard for them. One such is Justin Thomas. They've grown pretty close over the past couple of years from what I know. So just all around, we're rooting for Tiger. Hopefully he can get back to playing, but that's obviously that shouldn't be the focus right now.
Right.
It's got to be on his health, and that's
Right.
what we said.
It's just a quality of life thing at this point,
Right.
Like it would be selfish for me to say I want him to come back and run it up on the Champions Tour because at the end of the day, his legacy is his legacy. Like what he's done. I mean, if it were to be his last stuff, I mean it's more than enough. He's the GOAT in my opinion, or at least his peak is the best ever. You could argue about the other stuff, but
I agree. No arguments there. So I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. What a fun pod. Lots of good segments. We will try to put timestamps in the description on YouTube, so y'all can cut to whatever segments you want to hear in case you don't want to listen to the full thing in its entirety. And we'll be back for another episode soon to talk college basketball and some other things.
Right. Yeah, thanks for watching. One thing that my favorite YouTubers do is they put a comment if you make it to the end of the video, you say comment this. So if you're watching this right now, comment Tiger is the GOAT if you're watching this right now. But peace out, y'all. Have a great day. See y'all in the next one.